Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to, or I should say afternoon now. I'm so used to doing mornings. We've moved now to noon. So if you're watching us, you can watch us anytime, but we're live on noon across whatever channel you're watching us now. But welcome to the 3 Ps, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad you've joined us. Ted, the captain, is back on the pirate ship. Welcome, sir. How have you been?
Been great, man. I've been traveling, so here I am. I was lucky to be able to come in. I'm 2 hours difference. I'm out in Colorado. So it is 7 o'clock here.
Well, Colorado, man, I tell you what, it used to be somewhat of a frontier state, but it's the frontier and the bastion of liberalism now, it seems like. And the DSA has taken over out there, hasn't they?
Yeah, you're seeing it everywhere. And we had a good conversation last night with some folks that they're not quite in that camp, but they're not far from it. They just think everything they're doing is it's just rhetoric that really don't mean it. And I'm like, don't you believe that for a minute?
Well, the rhetoric,
yeah, we've got a lot of work.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, we weren't necessarily going to talk about it, but since you mentioned it, I mean, they came out with their platform just this past week or so, and they're talking about doing away with the Senate altogether, doing away with the presidency altogether, essentially doing away with the Supreme Court. I mean, and they say it's only radical because it hasn't been tried before.
Well, that would leave a dictator, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you take away the Senate. There's a few I'd like to see go myself.
Yeah.
You take away the presidency, you take away the Supreme Court. I don't know if it would be better or not. It certainly would not be the United States of America.
Well, I tell you what, we are in our lifetime. We're at an era where the wheels are coming off the bus. I've always had the mindset that you have to have faith in the system. You know, if not, why? If you can't have faith in the system that it'll maintain and survive this, why show up? They're going through some rough times in the House and the Senate, our government overall, foreign policy and things like that. But out of all that heap of ashes, there will be something that rises, and we need to make sure we're at the table, that we're engaged, that we're voting, because if not, these people that are the radical left are pushing their agenda. They'll be the ones in charge, and we just don't want that. There'll be a civil war before that happens, John. And we don't want that. This country's been through that before, and we just need to work through that. And it comes from education. We've got to educate people, and they're not getting that in schools.
Absolutely. Well, talking about education, yesterday I was listening to, I'm down here in Treasure Island, by the way, going on a fishing trip after this. And when I was listening to my satellite radio coming down, I heard, I know a favorite of yours, Dr. Hansen, Victor David Hansen. And thank God he's back on the scene, recovered from whatever his medical situation was. But he made a point on a show I was listening to where he was talking about why the young people are listening to this message from DSA. And he said, a lot of young people have gone into college and gotten multiple degrees and stuff, but it will be in something like gender studies or something else. And they come out and they look at it like someone who's got a PhD in engineering or is actually a medical doctor or a lawyer. And they'll say, I went to school as long as they did at the same type of schools that they went to, but I'm not making any money. I can't get a job, or if I got one, it's not enough to pay, for me to live in New York City or wherever I want to live. And he was saying, they're just totally naive about how economics work, and there's certain value to job economically. Now, it might be an important job they have, like say a marine biologist is a super important job, but they're not going to get paid the same as a guy who can design a skyscraper. They're just not. And they don't seem to understand that. and they think then that the system is rigged against them because they're not making the same money as a medical doctor.
No, I mean, it is. It's a failure of our education system, and teach people, go in and do what makes you feel good. They need to have education going into the thing about, you're going to school for 4 to 6 to 8 years. Get a degree that's going to give you a lifestyle that can, pay you an income. It was like when I did that chili cook-off, and I was with that guy that was from the University of Florida, and I asked him what he taught. He had a PhD, and it was a graduate course in ceramics. And I said, oh yeah, industrial ceramics, that's important stuff, high temperature, things like that. And he goes, no, pottery. Do you really need a course in pottery on a PhD scale? Maybe you do. And if you do, expect the returns that you get from that.
Like I say, I mean, some of these things like the gender studies, I mean, that's in another category in itself. But there's nothing wrong with getting a degree in religious theology or whatever you want to do.
Sure.
But if you have the expectation that you're going to make the same as a hotshot lawyer makes, that's an unrealistic expectation. And that's where the education comes in. And that's what we're trying to do on this show, is to educate, motivate, and activate people. And to do that, of course, we need people to come on board. So make that call you'll see on your screen there. Call Freddie, make that call, become part of our team, and help us to educate, motivate, and activate these people.
No, absolutely. And, this person I was talking to, they came from Vietnam, from another country. So they were refugees. Parents are strong Republican, love America, and they live up in New York, and they vote the New York way, and they just don't think the rhetoric that's coming out of the DSA is bad, but they think the Republican Party is, because they want to go after all these illegals and things like that. And it was interesting. I said, well, when you look at the people that replaced the incumbent Democrats that were liberal progressives, and they came in and they're anti-Western ideology. I mean, the one that won in the House seat said her goal, she's the one that went to Columbia University, was sponsoring the pro-Palestinian protest. And she was saying that she wants to do away with Western ideology. She wants to collapse it. And the lady goes, well, I can't believe that. And I said, no. I said, I watched her in the interview. And so, it's misinformation. They haven't done their homework, I'll say. A very intelligent lady, but their politics, they're not educated. And this is what our fear is in this country. People just line up on populism. They don't do the research, and they just go with the crowd. And this is where what I see is Republicans are more independent thinking. We can make these decisions. We get the facts. And they were talking about Obama and how Trump has the ban on the Muslim countries and how bad it was. I says, you need to back up here, because the ban Trump had in his first term are the very same bans that Obama had. And they're like, oh no, that's not right. I said, no. I said, check it out. I said, I've argued this before and I've researched it. So again, it comes from a lack of information, and they're just going with the political flow of their party and what they want to believe, and what they want to believe is not accurate. And again, it comes back to what we're doing, John. It's educating people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear that eliminate the West, basically. And
yeah.
Marco Rubio made a great speech. I started to make it a topic of the show, and we might as well talk about it, because it was phenomenal. I mean, he did a great job.
He really did.
He is an incredible orator. There's no question about that. And he talked about the terrorism of the left, the progressive left, and he talked about exactly what you just said about eliminating the West, basically. And the reason is because they can't do what we've done. They cannot do. So what I would say to people who want to eliminate Western culture, or why not just leave us alone? In other words, go build whatever you want to build wherever you're at, because there's plenty of places in the world that believe in whatever you're preaching. Go and build it there. and leave us alone. But they can't do that because they can't compete with Western civilization. They can't compete with it, which tells you which one, in that sense, if you're going to talk about, playing any kind of game, says that we have the better civilization. I'm not necessarily saying that. The results show that. And I just say to people, if you don't love what we're doing, you don't want to be part of a capitalist society, then go somewhere else. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
I'm sure we can find the collections to get the plane ticket to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be a one-way ticket, though.
Well, speaking of speeches, did you watch the president's speech last night?
I did not. I'm reading highlights of it right now.
Well, I figured you might not have been in a different time zone and everything. I did watch it, and I got to tell you, let me give you the bottom line first. I think everything first of all, he gave a very concise speech. He didn't do his normal Trump stuff and drone on for out. He kept it pretty concise, so I give him that as well. I'm not disputing a thing he said, and if everything he said is true, and I'm going to take him at his word, it is atrocious. It is something that we absolutely need to deal with. Do I think we're going to? No, I do not. I don't think that speech is going to move the needle at all. And it's not his fault. I just don't see the appetite for it in Congress, in the Senate. And here's the thing that's really bad about the Senate. Talk about doing away with Senate. I'd love to hear you on this. The founding fathers had it right the first time.
Yeah.
The Senate is set up now where you literally have people that live there forever. I mean, They're just on both sides of the aisle, and they just try to outweight a president. Presidents come and go, but Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, of course, he's about to leave only because he can't stand up anymore. They're there forever. So even John Thune and other senators, they're just trying to wait President Trump out at this point.
Sure.
There's no benefit to them directly to pass anything, really, because President Trump is a lame duck already. Now, he's stronger than any lame duck probably ever, but their system, the way they are, is that they'll just wait now till the next president comes. Do they hope it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio? Sure, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because they'll survive that one and be there again. And that is what's wrong with the Senate, in my opinion.
It is. And it's unfortunate that they're going to sit around and wait like that. They need to go through and get some of these things done while they can, because if the Republicans lose the majority, you think it's a lame duck now, it'll be terrible. They won't get anything done, and it'll all be impeachment, and going after Trump, the emollient clause and all that comes into play. And so, for this reason, I think it's cause for the Republicans to really rally and get people to, if you got to hold your nose, but vote for them to keep that majority in there. And hopefully they can put pressure on the president, because they're not going to worry about the next election because he'll be out. So they can run hard against him. And I think you're going to see people starting to challenge the president a lot harder. And I'd love to see Rubio do that on some of the things that the president's done that I know he just can't agree with.
Well, but the thing that is unique about the Senate, and not in a good way, the House can literally flip 20 or 30 votes, maybe even more, in a midterm election like this, one way or another. But the Senate, even if the Democrats take the Senate over, and I'm not advocating for that, it's only going to be by a few votes. What I mean? It's not, the Senate is going to essentially look the same 2 years from now as it does right now. There may be 3 or 4 vote difference, and I'm not saying that would be a good thing, but from their perspective as a whole, as a body, it doesn't really change that much. They're probably, even though the Democrats are talking about doing away with the filibuster, if they were in power, they probably won't, and that kind of thing. I don't know, but it's stagnant is my point, Ted.
In the past, I would agree with you. It was always said that the House is the boiling pot of water. The Senate is the saucer that, everything cools down there. And that was just a metaphor for the attitudes in those two chambers. But the way politics are today, it's you either win or lose, and they are going to go after everything. You think about when Obama was in there and they had the House and the Senate. They ran through so many things, and I remember hearing Biden when he was vice president. We went to an inaugural ball, and it was painful. But he was up there swearing at the Republicans and saying how we effed them over and we jammed it to them and we got them under our thumb. And it wasn't about ruling or leading the country. It was about beating the Republicans. And I don't remember the Republicans when I was in office, and being that just sophomorish, I guess. This is not about winning a game. This is about leading this country. And that's what I'm out here at a think tank in Colorado. And the whole thing is the lack of trust that the United States government has lost around the world with our allies and our adversaries. And so they're pivoting away from us. And if people like our allies, like the European Union, NATO, Canada's, they're gotten far away from us as they can, and they're getting closer to China. South Korea is re-looking at everything, and Trump's reaching out to Turkey and talking about maybe letting them get our F-35, which would be a disaster, because they've got the third largest military in the world, and they're not with us all the time. They side with Russia. They have Russia armaments. And for the president to say we will consider it, if he pulls back from that alienates Erdogan of Turkey. And so his foreign policy is just awry. The best thing for us to do is let's get the midterms done. Let's win the elections and put him in the basement where he can't cause any more disruptions like that. That's my personal beliefs. I'm thankful for a lot of the things he has done, like close the borders, the tax reforms, the big beautiful bill, and some of the things that were out of that. But we are not uniting our nation, and we're splintering the Republican Party, and it's time that we just change directions.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I just think that the Senate itself is kind of selfish and self-centered.
Well, I agree with that. They're more elite for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But it's back to the president's speech real quick. To me, the bottom line, I don't think it moves the needle. I wish it did, but I don't think it will. And if everything he said is true, which I don't doubt it, about the Chinese hacking into our elections, all that, we know they've been trying to do that, and the Russians and stuff too. I take that for granted. Do we need to stop it? Yes. Do I believe that only U.S. citizens should actually be able to vote? Yes. Do I think there's election fraud? Yes. I'm 100% in favor of what he's saying. I just don't think it's going to make a difference by the midterm elections as far as changing the law. It may change people's minds. That remains to be seen, but I don't think it's going to move the needle politically.
When I got in Congress, we had a meeting with General Alexander of the NSA, and he told us if you're on the internet, China is in your internet, it's in your computer. So there is no doubt they have hacked into all that, our infrastructure, our water, our electricity. They're just waiting for a moment. I can only hope that we have that much infiltration in there. So it's kind of like a détente. If you do this, we're going to do this. We had a cybersecurity bill I wanted to put in, but it didn't get passed. Well, we can talk about that later. So are they in our system? Yes. Is South Korea or North Korea in our system? Yes. Is Russia in it? Yes. Is Iran in it? Yes. So we know those things. Let's do what we can to harden our election process. And the best thing is the SAVE Act, and make sure that we clean up the rolls of people that are non-U.S. or dead on the voter roll, and make sure for the integrity of our electoral process that it's only U.S. citizens voting. And I just, the party that doesn't want that is the one that, it's the Democrat or DSA party, the Democrat Socialist. And, they're the ones that are looking at weakening America. And just for that reason, they shouldn't be in office. And I brought that up last night, in our conversation. It was interesting, her take on this. Actually, there was two people that were in at other camp. And, just to see that they don't see the rationale behind that. And they don't take that. No, that doesn't happen. No, it does happen. So we've got a lot of work to do. And the people that are listening now, just tell people to get engaged in the process. Read the news. Don't believe everything. Make your own determination after you do your research and vote properly. And the proper way is, people that are going to protect our Constitution and way of life here and a rule of law.
So, Ted, listening to you, I just got this thought, man. So I want to say hello to our listeners. So you're telling me that there is the potential that Vlad, she, and the latest Ayatollah are actually watching our show right now.
That's right,
hey, man. We'll know right. We're arrived when the latest Ayatollah is watching our show.
We're worldwide, John.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, another thing, and we'll go to commercial break after this, but ABC and NBC made the decision not to air the presidential address, which wasn't that long. It was less than 10 minutes. That is sad to me. And it's all Trump derangement syndrome. I cannot remember them ever doing something like that to Obama. And I would say the same thing if Obama were president and he was giving a speech and Fox News decided they weren't going to air it because they don't like him or whatever, I would chastise them just as hard. The president is the president. And really and truly, I think, especially over the airwaves, not a private thing, but over the airwaves, that we actually own, Ted, for them not to do that, I think could be a violation of the law, but it's certainly anti-American.
Yeah, I'm going to let other people worry about that. It's just, we've got so many things going on, and nobody, again, they're not concentrating on our major existential threat. Debt. We're almost at $40 trillion in debt, John. And they're increasing spending, and we're not doing anything to really stimulate the economy. I shouldn't say that. There are some things stimulating the economy, but not enough to offset that debt. And, China is our second biggest threat. And then we have that political divide in this country, with the communists growing in this country. And, I wouldn't waste their time arguing over that. The interesting thing is I'd seen headlines last week or so about AOC said that these stations should not air anything that is not factual. Well, if that's true, she shouldn't be on the air. But with those stations deciding not to air Trump, I'm like, are they listening to her? Give me a break. So it kind of worries me in that she has that much influence.
Oh, yeah, it's gaining all the time, to be honest with you. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, the old head ball coach, Steve Spurrier from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Check that out if you haven't before. But take us to break, Ted.
No, we appreciate everybody watching. And again, it's a redundant message. Spread our word far and wide. And we're looking for sponsors. Feel free to get in here. And we have Archer Automotive we've got to tell you about, because if you want service done to your car, truck, any vehicle, call Archer Automotive. They're there in the beautiful metropolis of Archer, Florida. And you can call for an appointment, 352-495-2485. And they're open from 7:30 a.m. Monday through Friday, and they close at 5:30 p.m. So you guys, we'll see you right after the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
We're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, as your host, and the captain of our pirate ship on assignment out there out west, Mr. Ted Yoho.
Right. I talk more about it, but we're under what they call the Chatham House rules, where you can't talk about stuff. So I want to keep it very generic. But going back to the election fraud that Trump did bring up, they said they are going to release a trove of information. And I know Tulsi Gabbard was working on this before she stepped down. And It's going to have the Obamas in there and the Chinese government. And I hope the president releases this immediately. I don't know what they have to do to go through that, but I think that would help a lot of people. If there's any confusion about this, they can start going through that. So back to you, John.
Yeah, the only problem, and I agree, like I say, I agree with all of that. But the media is not going to cover it in a fair way. The majority of the media,
right?
They're not, and a lot of people aren't really going to look at it, and it's going to be in depth. People, if they can't read it in 30 seconds or less, or there's a video on Snapchat or something, they're not going to pay attention to it. And so that's why I'm all favor what he's saying. I just don't, and people don't misunderstand this. I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you what I think based on my experience, that it's not going to change anything in the near term. I just don't think it is.
Well, I think the only way it can is if there's a fervor that we can create and people say, wake up, people, wake up, what's happening to our country, pay attention to these things. And, we've got to be the Paul Revere, the ones going out there, making the cry that the British are coming,
Well, and with that in mind, Ted, something I try to tell people all the time, there's somebody in their life that they probably, if they're not really paying attention, but say they vote, that they call. I know you get them, I get them, calls from people going, I don't know much about this election. Who do you think I should vote for?
Right.
If you really want to make a difference, you need to become one of those people. You need to try to influence 6 people. And try to get them to influence 6 people, invite them to watch our show, that kind of thing. That will make a difference. But if you're just waiting for the general populace to assimilate this, it's just, even though we got all this information, it's just not happening. So it's up to individual Americans to influence others, to be that sphere of influence. That's what needs to happen.
Let me tell you how powerful that word of mouth advertising is, like Archer Automotive. If you take a penny and double it every day, and tell somebody, I'll go to work for you if you pay me a penny a day and double it every day, in 31 days, that penny has doubled over $10.3 million. That's the power of going out, talking to one, and have them talk to 6 or 10 more, and just spread that word. And it's so easy. You can just say, hey, do you hear about what's going on here? Do you hear about the SAVE Act? Do you hear about the growing communism in the country? And people are like, no, I didn't hear that. So now they start doing that research and they spread that. It's the power of one, just multiplied. And that's what we have to get, people really engaged on, because this is our country. This is the one we're going to pass on. I'm 71. You're probably still in your 30s. But it's that future generation that we want to preserve this for. And along that line, John, if people really want to see the greatness of America and how it came about, there's 2 good movies out. Young George Washington, or Young Washington, I think it's called. And the other one is, it's one about George Whitefield. It's got Ben Franklin in there, and it's called The Awakening. These are just great stories about the founding of America. Just great stories. And it just kind of makes you just proud to be an American.
Well, Ted, to me, one of the best examples of one person influencing the next and word of mouth is actually you. Your victory. I mean, and I say that with affection. Your victory, because that's when we got to know each other at the same time, it coincided with the Tea Party movement. And basically that's what the Tea Party movement was. It was a group of people coming together that loved America, and then they started influencing one neighbor after another. And if you look at your initial race that you won, there were people who had more money, more name recognition, and everything else, and you won. And I mean, I'm not taking a thing away from you or your actual campaign, but it was the power you were able to generate within people to go out and influence others beyond the money and everything else that pushed you over the top. And so I think that shows, and it was a great decision, obviously, but that shows the power of exactly what we were talking about.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And it was such an honor to be able to serve. It was a grassroots movement. It was the just a word of mouth advertising. And that's always the best form of advertisement. And we can start a movement. I am convinced, and I'm writing this in my book, I am convinced you can win a presidency that way with a grassroots. You don't need the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to win an election. Yes, you do need some to create organizations in each state and each county. But I think you can do so much on a grassroots. And that's what I'd really love to do. And I think the American people would be too, just to see that we can break through this, all this money coming in, buying these crazy ads on TV and filling your mailbox up, and just say, I don't want that. I want the guy that's not going to do that, you know, and I'm really convinced about doing that.
Yeah, well, if anybody can do it, you can. Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Iran, the Iran situation. And when I say this, I don't mean in a good way. It's getting extremely interesting. But my title I created here is Iran, Deal or No Deal, because it kind of seems like that's where we're at. President Trump, on the one hand, is talking about, oh, they're ready to make a deal or they need to be obliterated. But this just happened with the in Iran right now. The Iranian regime has put up a billboard in Tehran that depicts President Trump in a coffin. And I think we've got a picture of it. There it is right there. So, I mean, they're pretty much telling you what they feel about Donald Trump. You talk about an assassination, they're literally showing that this is official government stuff. This is not just somebody paying for something. The official government wants Trump dead.
You know, they are. I mean, they're chanting that at the Ayatollah's funeral, you know, kill Trump, kill Trump. You know, we want him dead. You know, they've been chanting for 47 years, death to America, death to Israel. And, you know, Trump went in there knowingly that this was going to, you know, really hit the hornet's nest and there was going to be fallout from this. This is a terrible situation we're in. You know, this has got to be, there is no negotiating on this. It just has to be all out surrender. And, you know, I don't want to say obliterate the Iranian race. I don't want to do that to anybody, but there has to be a point of where they say uncle. And it's just, we're not there yet. And his whole family is jeopardized. You know, they'll go after everybody. And, you know, we should never have to live like that. And if we're strong and we get back, and it's going to take probably 10, 15 years to get America back on top, you know, and it's going to take leadership and it's going to take direction. And that, again, we don't have that. So for the Iranian regime to be doing this, you know, you'd have to take them at their word. And we know there's been a lot of attempts on his life. And we know that there's been some Iranian plots blocked already. So I'm going to pray for the president and ask you to do the same.
Well, they literally were chanting at the funeral in Farsi, and I'm sure they were given this chant to get out there. Probably wasn't grassroots, but says we don't want a deal. We want Trump dead. That's what they were chanting, and that basically is the official message coming from the Iranian government, really.
All right, and so this goes. You know, I had a problem with J.D. Vance going in there to negotiate. He was telling us they're going to buy corn and they're going to do this, and it's going to be great. And the whole time, Carolyn and I hate to bring Carolyn in this, but we're thinking this is all BS. This is not going to happen. But they're trying to sell us on a false narrative, and it's on something they hope will happen. But there's no way this was going to happen. And so to me, J.D. Vance has lost so much credibility. In fact, there's a hit piece on him in the Wall Street Journal today. We've just got to work through this Iranian thing as quickly and painlessly as possible. And again, I hope the president and his family and, you know, they stay safe and that we can get this under some kind of a resolve to where he doesn't have to worry about this and we can go on and get things back to, if there is a normal, let's get back to that as quick as we can.
Well, we're clearly starting to hit them deeper into Iran, and we have different targets than we've had before, because Iranian state media has reported, and I don't necessarily trust them, but I think this is probably accurate, that the U.S. struck overnight. We're like a day behind here or ahead. They're a day ahead of us. The U.S. strikes overnight hit an airport, a railway station, and 2 bridges in Iran. I think they're targeting the bridges and stuff that would be able to bring assets to the Strait of Hormuz,
right,
to shut that down. But
you know what? And my opinion is we're here, we're doing that, and they just need to keep this going until Iran says we're done.
Yeah. Well, of course, they're
go.
trying to spin it as civilian targets and that he's targeting the Iranian population. I don't really see it that way, but war is hell. It really is. And of course, we've instituted the blockade again. I don't know if it's actually official, but last night I know we had boarded a ship and we fired upon another one and turned around that were trying to go into ports in Iran. So what are your thoughts about it? It seems like our strategy is all over the place to me.
You're not going to like my thoughts. Well, number one, we shouldn't have gone into Iran. And I'm saying this, I don't know what Trump knew. I don't know if they had a missile pointed at, Washington, D.C. or anywhere else in the United States. But before I went into Iran, I would have had a coalition of countries and I would have had our oil export markets ramped up, ready to go with tankers going to the countries that need them. Keep in mind, it's only 20% of the world's oil that goes through there. And we are energy rich, and we should have had those lined up before we created this mess here. Because, if we had oil bypassing the Straits of Hormuz and we made up, close to that 20%, this wouldn't even be an issue. And then just let the Iranian regime starve to death. And, change would come from within. For us to go in there and try to change that. I mean, we've learned that in Iraq and in Afghanistan and any other Muslim country we went into. It was just a terrible, in my opinion, foreign policy blunder of this regime. And this is where I hold Marco accountable, because I would have thought he knew better. But again, I'm sure they had tremendous more information than I did. And I can only hope that he acted on that properly. If not, it makes it sound like to me, he wouldn't be fit to be a commander in chief, as much as I like him. There's at a point in time you need to stand up to the president and say, sir, I can't support you on this. And
well, see, to me, there's two separate things with Iran. I mean, I know it's a complex issue, but if Trump believed, like I do, that the Iranians had a nuclear weapon, they would use it, and that they were truly on the verge of developing one, going in there and obliterating that, or at least setting it back for years to come, was the right move. And I applaud that. The actual attack on Iran outside of that should have been planned out even better, just like you said. And an example of that is Iran has now officially, now unofficially, they've been doing this all along, but officially come out and said that if we start bombing their bridges and stuff like that and their power plants, they want the Houthis in Yemen to close the Red Sea over there. And that that is very predictable. And the fact that Hormuz, even under the best situation, a war was going to disrupt that, because we're talking about a narrow stretch there that Iran clearly has advantage of being right there. That if we were going to do that, we should have taken the Houthis out first and made a plan to bypass, like you say, because I think long range, we need to make the Strait of Hormuz irrelevant already. But we should have had a plan in place to make it that from day one. And that, I 100% agree with you, was a major mistake.
I agree, and the hidden information is not knowing what Trump and them knew. And, I didn't need to know that. That's why we elected him, to make those decisions. So he's there. And I just wish this would have been handled differently, but I'm thankful he's there, not Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
I hear you. Well, the question will come up like, what should the president do? I want to play a video from President Trump from roughly about a week ago, when he was either just going or just leaving the NATO summit. I don't remember which, but it's pretty interesting what he says in this. And we'll come back and talk about it. Check it out.
Last month, you said Iranian leaders were very rational people, nice people to deal with, strong people, smart people. Today, you said they were scum, sick people, and being led by sick people. What changed, and do you think
I got to know them. So I've said that about a lot. Now, when you say rational, I think they're much more rational than level 1, level 2. 1 is gone, level 2 is gone. This is level 3. I think they are more rational, but based on their actions over the last week or two, they're not doing a service to the people. And I think more than anything else is I got to know them. And I'm not sure I want to make a deal with them. We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
Well, but there you have it, kind of Trump, to me, where he's got to get away from this, because in one hand, he keeps saying they're desperate for a deal. They want a deal. They want a deal. And shortly after he says that, it seems like they fire a missile or hit a ship or something like that. And then he says, well, they're nasty, dirty people. They're scum or whatever he said. And then he says, well, maybe we just need to finish the job. In some ways, Trump needs to stop talking about this and actually just do what he's going to do.
Well, let me bring it to the world stage right now, because this has been talked a lot about in this meeting. It's that kind of rhetoric that just breaks our credibility as a nation and the trust in our nation. And if we're 3 to 4% of the world's population, so to think that we can just isolate ourselves from the rest of the world and run allies off that we really do need for trade, just things like that, like back to George Washington, honest and fair trade with all nations, entanglement with one. And those are the things that we are losing, that credibility and that trust factor that's been built up over 250 years, through good times and bad times. There have been some rocky times in the past, but moving into the future, we really need to get our act together, and we need to have that vision for America, where we're going, so that people do again trust us, and that they want our side. I hear, we're talking about doing programs in Africa and Southeast Asia. I was up in New York on Monday at the UN meeting with some the South Pacific Island nations, and some of them, the Solomon Islands, have gotten real close to China. China's imported their closed circuit television cameras. They're monitoring their systems. They're arresting people. The Chinese Communist Party arresting people in the Solomon Islands. And they've given kind of their authority to the Chinese Communist Party. And he goes, the guy I was talking to, he goes, I think we've gotten too close to them, and we want to get back to you guys, because they really like our values, freedom, free enterprise, things like that. Freedom and liberty and human rights. And those are the things that we really got to work back and build that trust factor again. And it takes time to do that, John. And right now we're just separating us from the rest of the world, and that trust factor is eroding.
Yeah, that reminds me of a line from a great movie. It's pretty hardcore, so people might not want to watch it if they're not shocked. It's called 38 Millimeter. Yeah, 30. It's a pretty good movie, but the guy in it, Joaquin Phoenix, is in it, and he says to Nicolas Cage, I think, character, he said, sometimes when you dance with the devil dances with you. And I think that's exactly what you're describing. When you get in bed with China, you may love freedoms and all that, but you're dancing with the devil, and you forget that the devil then is dancing with you.
Yeah. And, and we're hearing things are going to come to a head within 18 months. So I don't want to speculate on that, but I know DC is preparing for things that they want certain things done within 18 months. There's a time period on that. It's again, so who do you want to lead? Do you want somebody that hates America and lead like Gavin Newsom is leaning more left, so he can get that faction, the big tent, and your cousin Ken Martin, they'll take anybody into the tent. They don't care what their beliefs, they just want to win. Or do you want somebody that's going to stand up for a constitutional republic, rule of law, and the foundational principles this country is founded on? Those, to me, that's a very clear choice. That side's going to work to destroy America. The other side, we're going to go through some rocky roads, but the ultimate goal is to restore this nation's strength and get our fiscal house under control.
Well, there was a vote in the House this past week that we were talking a little bit earlier about the DSA and the Democratic Party and who's got the influence and all that. This vote that just happened, over 100 Democrats in the House of Representatives voted to slash U.S. aid to Israel. No more military aid to Israel. And that's why I put up the picture there, Hamas capital right there. That to me shows just how much influence that the DSA now has on the Democratic Party. Yes, they knew it was going to pass anyway, and they play games and all that. But the fact that 100 Democrats would actually not vote to support Israel shows you that the DSA is on the verge of running the whole show if they're not already.
They really are. And that the guy they beat up in New York, Golden, and they brought in the real radical pro-Palestinian, anti-Western democracy. They beat him with that guy they beat, Golden. He was a progressive liberal. They beat him with somebody worse than that. They're going after all these other people. Ro Kahana, who was a very wealthy guy talking, and he was always bashing the billionaires and the millionaires. Well, he's one of them, but he's saying, well, those people are really bad, but I'm not. And he's very liberal to the left. They're going after him, and they're going to throw him out of the party. And they're going to bring more of these people in, John. So they are on a rapid slide to become that much more radical.
Absolutely. Well, USA Today said about this vote where 100 Democrats voted against Israel, said the failed push suggests that more moderate or traditional pro-Israeli Democrats currently hold the advantage. I don't interpret it that way at all.
Not at all.
I don't interpret that. What I see is that even if they actually closetly would like to support Israel, they absolutely are terrified of what the DSA is doing. And so they are kowtowing to them. So I don't think that the moderate, if there is a moderate wing of the Democratic Party, I don't think they're in control at all.
Well, I brought that up last night. I said, the Democratic Party is gone. And she refused that. And I said, no, look at it. Look, and it's just, this vote is clear that, and the scary thing is, and this is something that I just couldn't understand people. They bend their principles. You know, if they support Israel, they bend them and vote against Israel just so that they can stay in favor with that far left side. That far left side is going to go after them anyways, but they're willing to give up their principles. And this is where people like that should be in Congress. If you're a firm believer of Israel, stand up for them and tell people why, you know, like Fetterman does. I know you got a video coming up on him.
Yeah,
I've got to respect him. I'm getting to where I respect him much more, you know, and we've talked about that before because he lets you know where he stands on that stuff.
Well, there's a poll out, a Quinnipiac poll, I think is how you say it. And my numbers, I didn't copy them down, so they may be slightly wrong. But in Pennsylvania, I think like 53% of the registered voters in Pennsylvania across party lines actually said they thought Fetterman should switch to the Republican Party. Even a majority of Democrats said that as well, that he should potentially switch to it. And he actually made a comment. We'll play this video and I'll let you come back and talk about it, Ted, where he talks about what it would take for him to potentially do that.
Yeah, he does.
Check this out.
And he's doing a joint fundraiser with McCormick up there, who is a Republican. And, you know, that just kind of shows you that he's lost in space being in that party because that party's not there anymore.
Well, you know, one thing about Fetterman, him and McCormick, I don't know if you saw this, but back when they were having the 250 town fair deal in the mall down there, Pennsylvania they had a booth, but no one came to represent it. They didn't do it from Josh Shapiro's office, for God's sakes. That tells you how he's kowtowing down. But McCormick and Fetterman went there and manned it themselves.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they went. I'm not saying they were there 10 hours a day, but they went every day and manned that booth for the state of Pennsylvania themselves.
You know, that's leadership. I'm proud of them for doing that. And, you know, we need more people to stand up and stick with your virtues and your beliefs. Not cow down to these people like Shapiro did and these 100 Democrats that went the opposite way.
Yeah. So let's play this video from Mr. Fetterman where he talks about what it would take to have him actually leave the Democratic Party. Check this out.
I've been frustrated the way the Democratic Party continues to turn its back to Israel. I mean, that's old news, honestly.
Would it make you consider switching your party?
I'm saying, like, if they put that in our platform, that Israel, no aid for Israel, and officially become the anti-Israel party, then yeah, that's a red line for me. Democrats, we've always should support Israel. That's our special ally, you know. Democrats in the only democracy in the entire region, that's Israel. So I'm always proud to stand with Israel.
Well, he's quite often said, I'm not planning on switching to the Republican Party, but he makes it very clear in that video that if the Democratic Party officially becomes anti-Israel, a part of their platform, which they're definitely on the verge of doing that he would leave it, because he said that is a red line he will not cross.
No, and I respect the man for saying that. And, you know, we need more people in politics to do that. You know, and this is not a game. This is our country that we're on the verge of, I think it's the rockiest, people say it's the rockiest we've ever been since the Civil War. You know, this is nothing like the Vietnam protests or the civil rights movement, and all those things is significant and historic as those movements were. What we're going through right now is on the verge of the Civil War of the 1800s.
Yeah, and I'm always reminded of what Ronald Reagan said. You know, if you look in a country that's people who have had freedom and lost it have never regained it again, and we're at that point. If these people have their way, we would lose it, and we probably
really
never regain it again. Well, we only got a few minutes left, so I want to do a quick update on Ukraine, and then we're going to come back and play one of the funniest and saddest videos I've seen in a long time. But Ukraine, Ted, I don't know if you've been following this, but it's kind of out of the news because of what's in Iran. But they had demonstrations on the streets of Kyiv a couple of days ago against, to a certain extent, Zelensky, because he fired one of the top people that has kind of been the orchestrated, if you will, behind the scenes of the successes that they've had against Russia. So it's really interesting because I'm getting reports that Putin is hanging on by a thread. I'm not saying that's true or not, and all that. And now Zelensky, this thing is really going to escalate, I think, in a really bad way really quickly. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I think both sides need it to end, but I don't think they're going to end it peacefully.
No. You know, it is interesting because you brought up that Putin's on his last thread. You know, they're rationing gas in Russia. I mean, people they're starting to revolt in Russia, and that's really what it's going to take. But you know, Zelensky, he's got to make those decisions, and I don't know why he made that. I heard there was things about corruption in there, and that's typical for Ukraine. I mean, they've been wrought with corruption, and you know, but what they are doing, I mean, a small country like that, I forget how many million people, they're like 20 to 40 million people up against Russia's 160, I think they have. And they are going in there and just really formidable force and really forcing Putin's hand.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's remarkable what they've been able to do, and even though their population is actually a lot less now than it was because they've lost people and people have left, and they really don't have much of an economy right now. So what they've been able to do is pretty amazing. But I want to play one more video before we leave. This is Joe Biden. Yes, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is pushing a book, a memoir, that is going to be released in November. Now, originally it was supposed to be released in the spring, but basically, from what I've heard, the Democratic Party said, please, Joe, don't put this out there before the midterms. So he held back, probably got paid to do it. But this is him, and I want to point out something before we actually play it. The subtitles you see on this video are not something that was added after the fact. These subtitles are actually in the promotional video they produced. because you can't halfway understand, Joe. And how many times did they take it? And they finally probably just said, well, let's put subtitles in it. So I wanted people to know these are not added after the fact. These were part of the original video release. Let's play it and we'll come back and talk about it briefly. Check it out.
Since I left the presidency, I've had a lot of people ask me, Joe, what have you been doing? I've written a book about my time as president. It's called Promise Me America. It's coming out in November, and it's available for pre-order now. It's about the challenges we face as a nation, about the decisions I made, and why I made them. Leading the country through COVID, rebuilding our economy, and restoring our democracy after the attack on January 6th. Ending our nation's longest war in Afghanistan, strengthening NATO, and supporting Ukraine. It's about why I chose to run for re-election and why I chose to step aside.
I mean, Ted, I don't know whether to laugh or cry when I see that. And the part towards the end that he talks about the book is going to tell him why he chose to run for president and why he chose to step aside. I mean, good Lord, man. Even he can't possibly, if he believes that, then he is truly senile.
Yeah, that would be a great one to send for Christmas gifts. Your favorite people. Let's just hope he goes away soon. Yeah, I thought that was funny that they had those subtitles in there.
Yeah, that's why I pointed out, because people might think that was put in for the purpose of that video. It was put in the original production. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. The only thing we can celebrate is he's not in the office anymore, or his any of his proteges like Kamala.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, she's actually leading in the presidential poll right now by double digits over Newsom. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. But ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide. Make that call Freddie. Help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. I hope you have a blessed, glorious weekend. I'm going fishing. Ted, take us out.
Yeah, we appreciate you tuning in, watching, spreading the word far and wide. And don't forget to see our sponsors, Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair in downtown Archer, your full service diesel and gas repair facility. 20 years in business, and they'll treat you like family. Call them at 352-495-2485. They're open Friday through Monday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. You guys take care. God bless. Have a great weekend. Good fishing.
Peace out, everybody.
Tight lines and calm seas.